there's this one final article that I wanted to go through, which perhaps which is the most recent one, and it comes from October 10th, 2022, and it really, really hit home, and it really just made things perfectly clear as to where we're going, guys. And I'm gonna read some of this transcript for you, and we're gonna have an interesting time understanding what their goals are because they lay it out. Again, this is the World Economic Forum, so there's some sort of conversation that took place. There was a panel, there are people talking, and I'm gonna read. And I was reading part of the transcript, and it mentions our brothers, the Dutch farmers. So it says, but if you are, say, so this is Adrian Monk. But if you are, say, a Dutch farmer and you're told to take certain actions in order to use less fertilizer, for example, or to, make less emissions, and you find it hitting your bottom line, and you take to the streets to protest because you see your livelihood being threatened, how does the message get through to farmers like that? Or how do governments begin to compensate people for the cost of these changes? Because what we're seeing is that a lot of this transition comes with a price tag. And as you said, currently that price is set up to pay people to do certain things that are not delivering what we want to deliver. How do you make sure, from a government point of view, that people actually don't feel robbed or disempowered? They actually, feel like they're on the right pathway towards achieving those goals. So, of course, they're very cognizant of the fact that the Dutch farmers are not happy, and many farmers around the world are not happy with these measures. So their question is, oh, what can we do to appease them? The answer, aligning the incentives from Maximo Torero. These are all high up dudes in the World Economic Forum. But let me go into his response. Aligning the incentives. So I don't need to provide the Dutch farmer more resources to keep subsidizing the production of cereals. I can give incentives to the Dutch farmer to produce high value commodities and to innovate in technology. My apologies, guys. My recording device totally turned off and I had to restart. Let me just reiterate this quote. And I think this response, again, is super telling of what the future looks like if we are to leave it in the hands of these technocrats. And this is critical to understand. Mr. Maximo Torero, his response to how we, again, the question was how we make sure that the farmers don't feel like they're being cheaped out, like they're not being scammed. Fundamentally, that was the question. And his response is aligning the incentives, quote, aligning the incentives so I don't need to provide the Dutch farmer more resources to keep subsidizing the production of cereals. I can give incentives to the Dutch farmer to produce high value commodities and to innovate in technologies which will provide healthy diets to the world. The problem is I'm doing the opposite. So the problem, you go to farmers in X countries, in developed countries where the subsidies are such level that they can make a museum of tractors because they have so much money that they can keep buying tractors. Again, tractors. They hate tractors. Why? Because as I mentioned, the NOx emissions. And you ask, why do you do that? Oh, because of the subsidies. So it's completely inconsistent to the reality we are living. Let me translate that. The first part is really where the heart of the answer comes in. He says, we need to give incentives to the Dutch farmers to produce high value commodities. What does that mean? Commodities and to innovate in technologies? What does that mean? What are they trying to say when it comes to farming? Create commodities? Let me tell you what that means. It means, again, they're trying to condition. They're trying to get certain behavior. They're trying to gain actions from people. So, of course, it's all about incentives. It's all about carrots and sticks. What do they want the farmers to produce? They want them to produce their own commodities. This is something that's becoming more and more prevalent when it comes to food. We've had the advent of artificial meats, beyond meat. What is the beauty of these things is that you can now patent food. You have a food that you can put on the market. You have companies that benefit from these foods, these artificial foods. Now, what is this guy talking about? He wants to align incentives. He wants the Dutch farmers to produce commodities. So he wants them to produce the fundamental building blocks. That's what a commodity is. It is a building block, right? A commodity is something that is so base that it cannot be differentiated. For example, rice. Rice from one region is similar to rice in another region. Oil from one region is similar to the oil to another region. Give or take, right? It's a commodity. Gold, it's a commodity. Now, food is a commodity. They want to make these foods into commodities and then innovate in technologies. Now, what does that mean? So, previously in this conversation, they mentioned something else that's very interesting. They mention a cereal, right? They mentioned their own artificial cereal that they've created. So what he's saying, when he's saying we're going to get them to produce commodities and we're going to innovate with technology, what that means is they get the fundamental base building blocks from the farmers. They incentivize them to build that. Then they inject that into their own formula, into their own cereal. And they actually have a link to this cereal. It's called Super Cereal Plus. I kid you not. I'll show you the screenshot. It's called Super Cereal Plus. And what's interesting about it is the mixture. So what do we have? Ingredients: wheat, 52.3%, dehulled soya beans, 25%, dry skim milk powder, 8%, sugar, 9%, refined soybean oil, 4%, vitamin and mineral premix, 0.2%, dicalcium phosphate anhydrous, 1.23%, potassium chloride, 0.27%. So what we have is something where you've literally reduced the amount of wheat. If you wanted to give people wheat, you could just grow wheat, right? But wheat is only a component of this mixture. It's a concoction. So they get the farmers to make the commodities to then input it into their little formula that they can then sell. You see how this works? And then they market it as a super cereal. It's a super cereal. Wheat soya blend is consumed as a porridge or gruel. It should be prepared by mixing an appropriate portion of flour and clean water. Guys, he just spelled out the beans. They want to incentivize, they want to take land first and foremost. Then they want to force people to grow commodities, things that they want. They want to inject those commodities into their artificial foods, which they can then put onto the market and make profit from. Similar to Big Pharma, now you have Big Food. Legit. This is what's happening.